Moving on to the next section of chapter 4, where we need to solve equations, quadratic equations that is. And right here I tell you, you could apply a square root or you could factor, split, and solve. Okay, so number 5, the easiest way to do it is to apply a square root. So you're going to square root here to get the x by itself, square root over here. Now the one detail that you need to know from this section is that if you ever apply a square root in an equation, you have to put a plus minus right in front of your answer. So you're going to have x, no more square, equals, and you're going to put plus or minus 9. Ladies and gentlemen, if you do not put that plus or minus in front of your 9, I'm only going to be able to give you half credit. So that's horrible. Please remember that when you apply a square root in an equation, you have to put a plus or minus in front of your answer. Let's move on to number 6. Okay, this is a quadratic equation. Notice that I can't really get x squared by itself, because if I move the 4x over, then I have x's on both sides. It gets ugly. So I'm not going to try to apply a square root. I'm going to try to factor, split, and solve. Now the only way I could factor and then split it is if it's equal to 0. So I need to first make it equal 0, and then let's see if we could factor it. So I'm going to subtract 12 there, subtract 12 there. This cancels. Let me rewrite my quadratic trinomial equation. X squared minus 4x minus 12 equals 0. And now hopefully we could do this. Hopefully we could go parenthesis, 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 equals 0. That way we could split them and solve. So the question is x, and the question is what times what is negative 12 that if I combine together is negative 4? Well, if you don't see it right off the bat, go ahead and make a list. Negative 1 times 12. Negative 2 times 6, negative 3 times 4. Those are all the possible ways of getting 12 as your C value right here. Negative 12 is your C value. So the question is, which pair of numbers combines together to give you the B value, which happens to be negative 4? Now, this gives you 11, so it can't be it. This does give you 4, but the thing is, you want it to be a negative 4, not a positive 4. If you add negative 2 and 6, you get 4, but you want it to be a negative 4. So what does that mean? You have the right numbers, because you get 4, this is a negative 4. You just have the wrong signs. All you have to do is change that and change that, then you're good. So inside the parentheses, you're going to have a plus 2 and also a minus 6. Ladies and gentlemen, you have factored. So why did you want to factor this to make it look like this? That way you could split them and set them each equal to 0 and solve each of them. So let me do that. Let me go x plus 2 equals 0, and let me go x minus 6 equals 0. Let me solve each of them. I want to get x equals negative 2, and I'm also going to get x equals positive 6 if I solve both of those correctly. So number 6, your answer is negative 2 and 6. Well, I forgot to write the answers over here the way you're going to have to do it on tomorrow's test. Okay, so for number 5, we said x equals plus or minus 9. If you don't have the plus or minus, you're going to only get half credit if you only put 9. And the other one is x equals negative 2. You could put and negative 2 and 6. There you go, 2 answers, right? Moving on to number 7, and then you think, wait a minute, 7, 8. Well, that's a hint for you. If it's 2 points, that means it's going to be a challenging question. This one's going to be tough, right? So we're going to have to factor on this one. Now the thing is, the A value is not 1, and that's where you have to remember all those steps that we actually went through to be able to solve this thing, all right? So we're going to have to factor by using the method of multiplying A times C. So step 1 is to multiply A times C, 2 times negative 3, that is negative 6. Okay, step 2 is to, if you remember, if not you could go back and look at your notes. Step 2 is to think of the multiples of negative 6 that combine together to give you the middle value B, which is positive 5. So the only way of getting negative 6 is negative 1 times 6 or negative 2 times 3. So which pair of numbers combines together to give you positive 5? Well, if I combine these guys, what is negative 2 plus 3? That doesn't give me 5. Negative 2 plus 3 is 1, so it's not those guys. Now if I go negative 1 and 6, Well, those, if I combine them, it really does give me a positive 5 that I have right there. So that's how I know that that's the answer for step 2. Now, this is the interesting part of this long process of solving a quadratic equation where your a value is not 1. The interesting part is you take this pair of numbers and you rewrite your b value as these two pair of numbers with x's on them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite this whole thing, and instead of 5x, I'm going to put negative 1x plus 6x. All right, let me repeat that. I'm going to write this whole thing, but instead of 5x, I'm going to rewrite it as negative 1x plus 6x. So here we go. Let me first make some space, and let me rewrite that top equation. And as you could see, instead of the 5x in the middle, I rewrote it as negative 1x plus 6, negative 1x plus 6x. So why would I want to change 1, 2, 3 terms to 1, 2, 3, 4? So I could apply factoring by grouping. So here's my first group, here's my second group. I'm going to put some space between them. Let me first zoom in, since we don't have much space right here on this test. Let me zoom in and let me make space for my two groups. So I have space between my two groups. Here's some space. So what could I pull out of the first group? What's in common in this first one and the second one? There's no numbers in common, but there are x's. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out an x, okay? Now when I pull out an x, what do I have left over? I'll have a 2x left over and a minus 1, okay? And now what could I pull out of my second group? What's in common in here and here? Well, I could pull out a 3, right? If I pull out a 3, and that is a positive 3 that I'm pulling out. If I pull out a positive 3 from that binomial, I will have 2x and a minus 1 left over. Don't forget about the equals 0 that's out here at the end. And this is a beautiful thing because you have a 2x minus 1 here and a 2x minus 1 there. And the next step on factoring by grouping is to take a step back, and factor whatever's in common in the first group and the second group, which is the 2x minus 1. Let's pull that out, okay? So I'm going to pull out the 2x minus 1, and what will I have left over? Some exaggerated parentheses. I want to have an x left over and a plus 3 left over. Okay, so let me rewrite this in the appropriate size parentheses. So I'm going to have 2x minus 1, close parenthesis, open parenthesis, x plus 3. And of course, let's not forget about the equals 0 over here that I need to bring down and put in front of my, or at the end of my problem here. So I now have something times something equals 0. I need to split them, set them each equal to 0, and solve, okay? So I am running out of space, I apologize. This is going to be 2x minus 1 equals 0. This one's going to be x plus 3 equals 0. And if you do the correct math, I'm not going to do it, right? I'm just going to do it in my head. Plus 1, divide by 2, divide by 2. Your answer will be x equals 1/2. That is your answer. Now the other one will be x equals negative 3. That's your other answer. So you do get two answers for this one. That one took a lot of time. That one took a lot of effort. That's why it's worth 2 points. So the answer is 1/2 and negative 3. So let me go over here, and I'm going to put x equals 1/2. You can put a comma if you want, negative 3. You don't have to write the word and, but you do need the x equal, all right? Let's move on to the next part of the test. Actually, let's not move on to the next part of the test. I want to do another video that only explains this next portion of simplifying radicals and complex values or complex numbers.